I would like to share with you a profound spiritual experience that happened to me shortly after I was recovering from a cancer operation back in 2011. It demonstrates that divine grace is all around us and that we can become beneficiaries spontaneously and quite naturally. I have to mention that at that time I had been meditating for about 40 years as part of my daily routine, and I was already firmly locked into an awareness of a divine presence which surrounds every one of us. At that day, I was in the garden sanding down an old chair whilst enjoying the spring sun. I couldn't tell what the reason for my joyfulness was. I simply attributed it to the fact that I had just completed some commercial work and relished a breathing space between jobs, and perhaps the fact that the garden was just so beautiful, with the birds singing and the flowers blossoming all around me. But that was not it. I also became aware of a silent presence, not a personal presence, but a presence of being, which saturated the very air I was breathing and lingered on anything my eyes, hands and ears touched. Occasionally I had to pause in what I was doing and let the feelings wash over me, leaving me with a deep sense of joy and gratitude. Then I carried on sanding my chair, enjoying the satisfaction it brought. But the feeling did not leave me. It became more and more persistent and intense. I finally decided to retreat into my meditation room in order to focus my attention exclusively and without any distraction on my new companion. Before I could even sit down into my meditation chair, I felt a tingling sensation in my body, rising up my spine and quickly spreading through my body while I was slumped into a half-lying position. As I closed my eyes, instead of seeing the dark shields of my eyelids, I was staring into an intense light. It was a light which was not just in my eyes, or even my head, but it cascaded like a waterfall over my sprawling body. But unlike water, it consisted of countless of fine luminous filaments pulling me upwards towards an enormous sun. I noticed that the moment I lay spread-eagled in my chair, I had already abandoned my persona and ego completely, and there was simply nothing holding me back. I had entered a new autonomous mode of existence, which was simply made up of the fact that I was alive, nothing more, and so simple. My new space surrounding me consisted of a space of pure light, with nothing in front, in it or behind it, just an intense reality of essence, incredibly luminous and mercifully keen to consume me. As soon as I offered myself, it welcomed me with intense joy, which instantly transformed into ecstasy I had rarely known before. For a while it was teasing and playing with me, offering new intensities of rapture and pointing my attention towards endless vistas of luminous orbs which were nothing less than the infinite centers of themselves. Each one could have been a whole new universe to explore. I was stunned by the panorama that surrounded me. I felt blessed that I formed such an intimate part of it. As I turned away from the lights, I became aware that I was being elevated into a new reality, where the chair I was lying on and the room itself were no more than vaporous mists, objects of little permanence and reality. What I saw here was essence in its purest form. Wherever I looked, I saw new landscapes emerging, rising out of luminous mists, sometimes as thick as clouds, drifting and percolating through metamorphosing shapes which created fascinating objects. These clouds were unmanifested matter, shifting landscapes of color, of different densities and character, springing into shapes, responding to some mysterious creative impulse, and then dissipating. Within no time I was surrounded by a glorious archway which expressed perfectly my wonderment about this region, and from there other archways opened ahead of me, each different, created by my continuing thought process, more glorious as I walked through, adapting intimately to my thoughts and inspiring me to look further, with a mind that had ceased to think in a linear way, but instead spread out like the rays of a sun, exploring simultaneously its many options all at once. There was space, without the sequential movement of time. It was a space made out of existence, out of being, if this makes any sense at all. As I ventured further through my archways of thoughts, knowing intuitively but explicitly why every aspect of their grand, intricate design was shaped the way it was from its luminous fibers, and why it opened new archways. Every shift in my perception and thinking pattern simultaneously affected every part of the world surrounding me. I was surrounded by mental matter, not as abstract waveforms of mental energy, but waveforms solidified into incredible complex shapes in phenomenal detail, each design element communicating directly why it had to be exactly the way it was. And clearly, whatever was created had at its root a luminous light, a light which gave it sustenance and life. It was easy to focus on the underlying light and identify it as its source for existing in the first place, a light which was a luminous sun or suns. At every endpoint of thought, shape or feeling there were these luminous suns. I saw that all thoughts were rooted in pure consciousness, and all thoughts in their final analysis will inevitably reveal their serene and exalted origin. I am aware that every cliché known to man is likely to be cajoled into life by an experience such as this one. I'm conscious of the limitations of pressing language into the service of describing something that clearly belongs to a language-free zone, its opposite hemisphere of the brain. But here it is. This light is like no physical light at all, more like a space lit up, a stillness which was wherever I was, a presence of luminosity right beside me. I felt as if it smiled the moment I turned my attention towards it after tearing myself away from the wondrous sights surrounding me. It regarded me like a child, lost in its world of play, and like a loving parent accepting its child with love and joy. The moment I turned away from its play, fully assured that it would not be left out of sight for a single moment, no matter how far it strayed. At any time I could enter into the light wholeheartedly, and it would accept me with joy and without reservation. It was this reassurance which made me linger and explore my new environments, being aware of my pledge for research, but I was more like a child being seduced by a vibrant world surrounding me than a researcher. Wherever I looked, I saw new patterns emerging, creating an infinity of finely woven objects. I was aware of the presence of the light, my silent witness and guardian parent, all the time waiting patiently for me to follow it home into its very heart. Each time I called, it appeared reliably and joyfully, and each time revealing a new and thrilling aspect, yet unchanging, reassuring me of its eternal companionship. It was this that gave me the freedom to turn my attention towards gigantic rings of fire surrounding me with symmetrical flames, casting vast changing patterns miles high into an endless sky. Immediately after the first ring reached its apex, another ring formed above me with an irresistible invitation to be carried skywards by its overwhelming force. Simultaneously I became aware of my body once more and felt a powerful yet pleasantly cool pressure on my forehead, as if some god had placed 3 fingers on the spot between my eyebrows, urging me to take its energy and letting go of anything that was still fastening me to my former self. The ring of fire and the touch on my forehead were the same energy. At this point, I was gripped by an intense ecstasy, which was enough to sever any remaining link or attachment I may have had. It was the same light as before, but of a new intensity, of a greater order. The fog of thought which had seduced me only moments ago were licked away like the morning mist by a midday sun. The sun was clarity, with layers of clarity revealed as each gave birth to a light of even greater intensity. In the end there were no attributes, just the neutrality of being. No insights to be gained, no wisdom to behold. All insights and all wisdom were nothing more than shapes painted on the sand of an incoming tide. There was nothing to be spoken of and nothing to be said, because there was no medium to convey it. There was just stillness, being. For a few further moments I could see with the eyes of creation, looking out from the center of clarity, of an unfolding world of shapes and appearances, strange shapes which emerge in ever-unfolding pattern, creating new worlds around me. I heard a celestial song in the distance, which then solidified into the mundane siren sound of an emergency vehicle. I knew I had spent just over an hour in my chair. My wife's hairdresser had arrived, and the animated shutter floated across the landing towards my meditation room. There was a distinct peace underlying the sounds, and peace cemented all the shapes of my old world together again. And then I opened my eyes, and I was back sitting in my chair, bathed in peace and stillness, and I knew this peace and this stillness will still be there once I carry on with my normal day.